I know you're saying, Alk, what's good? Why does this video sound like this? Why does it look like this? I will let you guys know at the end of the video. But first, let's talk about what happened in Brooklyn last night. Final game of this East Coast road trip. Draymond's 35th birthday party celebration in New York, 48 hours before that. Probably, if you talk about how late they were partying, it was probably closer to 24, right? And so I think everyone understood, hey, man, this game's it may be tough. It may look ugly, right? How much juice do they have left? How much focus do they have left after several comeback emotional wins on this road trip? And the Brooklyn Nets, like, look, what did we do to the Nets? The Nets came out like we were arch rivals. They came out looking for all the smoke. Perhaps a young team in particular, you see how this Steph tour on the East Coast goes, where it's a pro-warrior crowd. Maybe the younger teams take it more personal. I don't know what it was, but they came out wanting all the smoke. And I think, ironically, that's what gave the Warriors the juice to get the job done, right? They're not calling any fouls. They're throwing Steph all over the floor. They're just being super physical. They're like, we bullies. We're going to bully this old guys. They don't want to play physical like that. Well, what the Nets found out was they were wrong. Because when you look at this roster of the Warriors, they may not play in that style every night, but we've got plenty of goons. We've got plenty of dogs, right? And I actually thought Steph hitting that young dude over with the charge call after he was all over him, I thought that set the tone. That was the moment where I was like, okay, they might fight back in this one, right? We were down like 20-5, and that's my favorite version of Steph Curry, bully Steph. You got all these different variations, but when Steph's actually mad and he starts snarling and it's not really, the celebrations go away and he's just like, all right, well, careful what you ask for, young Nets, because that's what you got. The 40 ball from Steph on 20 shots. Now, when Steph was struggling earlier in the season, and I know a lot of y'all giving me flack on the 6-man comment, and I'm not going to try and defend it. Like, I get it was a hot button thing to say, but I think a lot of you missed the point. So it is what it is. But when he was struggling, and I made that comment, the discussion was: is Steph finally physically slowing down, or is he hurt? And then there were others that were like, no, he's just discouraged. He just doesn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And then ultimately, I think most people were like, it's probably a bit of all of this, right? Well, those of you that were in the camp that were like, no, Steph's just mentally, he just doesn't believe in the team. Hey, here's your flowers. Because he looks like he's 30 years old again. The way he's moving and the trigger on his shot right now is so quick, it's just demoralizing. So Steph was Steph, right? And I love when Steph becomes bully Steph, but I wanted to focus on the young guys here. Santos. He is a menace. He is a menace out there. And have you noticed that there is this thing that's happening where Guy gets an offensive rebound of deflection. He makes a play for a loose ball, and it almost always ends up in a Steph three. It's a thing. And I'd said in today's breakdown, it almost reminds me back in the day when Bogut was a part of this early on. A Bogut block shot resulted in a Steph Curry three or a Clay three. It resulted in them running down into a three. And this Guy has this weird effect, but his energy and his 50-50 ball ability, in a guy at 6'8" like that archetype of hustle player, what you usually don't get with it as well is the passing and basketball IQ. So he has a unique skill set that fits perfectly with the team, and I'm glad that he's getting an opportunity. He's in the rotation every night, right? He's just a guy immediately, oh, a game like last night, we don't have energy, the old guys are old on that night, throw Guy in there. That changes things. So I want to shout out Guy for that. And then I also want to talk about Moses Moody and his defense becoming a disruptor. And I've spoken about it a little bit here, but he has come to the realization, look, I can't match foot speeds he's come to the realization, look, I can't match foot speed with a lot of these perimeter guards. But what I can do is use my length to disrupt their dribble and rhythm. And you're seeing him do it every night now, where he's just poking and prodding at the ball. And as a ball handler, these guys, like their moves, especially with today's player, they do so many drills, right? Open gym drills. They're like muscle memory, these pre-programmed rhythms and ways to get themselves into rhythm. And Moses is disrupting the rhythm because of what he's got, like a 7'2" wingspan, 7'1" wingspan. It's kind of Kawhi-like in how he does it. Now, he's not as strong as Kawhi, but as he gets stronger, he's going to get more effective with it. But you're seeing him get deflections and just break, even if he doesn't get a piece of the ball on the dribble, what he does is he's making the guy pick up and change the rhythm of what they want to do with the ball, up at the top of the court, coming up the court. And so I think that that's been huge for him, a huge light bulb for Moses, as well as, he's taking from the book of Jimmy. You're seeing him with the shimmy rip through to the baseline and just some of these little nuanced things that Jimmy does. You're seeing Moses pick up very quickly. And it's not surprising because, what do they say? Like, if you're always talking, you're never listening. I'm guilty of that, obviously, right? But Moses is so quiet and humble. It's no surprise that he's learning quickly because he's always listening, right? Now, I do think that, and Moses has shot all right. He shot all right, but I do think that there probably is a give and take and a cost to his shooting and offense a little bit if you're going to ask him to be up on the ball, disrupting like that. But I think it's fine, and he's a good enough shooter where it won't just disappear. And then let's talk about GP2. GP2 is such a unique player and dude, right? And look, that looks so bad. Was it in Charlotte? Was it in Charlotte that happened? But it was pretty obvious like he had broke his nose. And the way he stayed down, how tough he is, I assumed he would be in concussion protocol. And it's like if they have to re-break it, like noses obviously can be super dynamic. And it was like, oh, okay, he's probably not going to be back on this road trip at the very least. Not only is he back after one game wearing the goon mask, he's back like he never left. Like, I don't think some people may appreciate the trauma that comes along with breaking your nose or getting smashed in the face like that. When I was a young cat, I have a scar here from getting cracked with a 40 bottle, right? And there's a trauma with it where, at least until I could fully see good out of my eye again, like I didn't like stuff in that side of my peripheral. I remember I went to the movies a couple of days later, and I was like, there's a trauma to it especially with something like that. And so for GP2 to come out there and not just play, but play like nothing has happened, goon on the nets, right? When they started throwing stuff around, GP2 was like, bet, all right, let me lay you out. Let me do this. And he tries to dunk on Claxton. He's such a goon, bro. And, it's a gift and a curse in a way, because sometimes I'll admit there's times where it's like, he's nursing the calf, the hamstring, whatever it may be, and you see him like dive into the crowd for a ball or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, you might want to chill on that. Like, you need a little bit of self-preservation. But again, that's what makes GP2. He's wired. He's gonna play the same way regardless of the circumstances, and he just has that mental ability. And that leads me to Kuminga, who we're still waiting on, right? Detroit is supposed to be the game Saturday night, but you keep hearing these comments. The latest, I think, from Steve was, hey, he's got to feel ready to go. Like, he's got to feel comfortable. And kind of putting it back on Kuminga. That's the first comments where it sounded like maybe Kuminga isn't ready to play himself, and it's not the team holding him back. And so I say all that to say there is a mental hurdle that especially a young player like Kuminga, who this is probably the worst injury of his career, no doubt, right? There's a mental hurdle of like, you got to go out there and do it. Like, I know you think like your mind, your mind is telling you, like, his mind is holding him back, possibly, is what I'm getting at here. Where a guy like GP2, Monte was like that. There's guys that it just doesn't matter. Remember when Monte, the first game back off the moped, first play, I'll never forget, baseline inbounds, he comes and dunks on somebody. You're like, oh, okay, Monte. I guess you're mentally over it, right? And so maybe that is part of the case with Kuminga, but fingers crossed we see him on Saturday. Another big aspect of the game, there was so much about this game that you have to love as a Warriors fan, besides the start, right? But the start made it even better how it ended. Jimmy's clearly getting his legs, right? The end of the third, start of the fourth, he's got more aggressive with his shot, 10 of 10 from the foul line, right? He's clearly getting in better shape. But how about Quenton Post? After the rough night in New York, he comes back in that fourth quarter and puts Cam Thomas in the basket, gets to a floater, grabs a rebound, best cellies in the game, hands down. I'm serious. Like, challenge me. I know that's a subjective thing, but I think Quenton Post has the best cellies in the game right now. But I'm going to take it even further because I know, like, it's early, But how many good centers are there in the league? First, I was thinking like rookie of the year. You know, is it Stephon Castle? It's a weak rookie class, right? But if he continues to play 20, 25 minutes, he's got to finish in the top 5, right? In this rookie class right now. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but then I wanted to take it even further. How many good centers are in the league? 10? Right? Like, where are we at what point here? Where are we ranking Quenton Post already? Because defensively, you're seeing him guard the perimeter. Like, he doesn't give up much. So impressed with Quenton Post. And you could see how quickly he figured out after that Knick game, like, no, when these little guys crowd me, let me throw an elbow, pivot, and be big. And you saw him do that down the stretch there. I think the other big thing was Buddy was 0 of 8. Right? And they panned to Kerr. It was early in that fourth quarter. He had missed 2 in a row. And you could see Kerr, his wheels turning like, all right, I got to get him out of there. I got to get him out of there. And he didn't ride Buddy at the end there. And that was the right move. And I think that's what we're asking for. Listen, I know Steph came out the other day and was like, Buddy's one of my all-time favorite teammates. And I get the vibes. I get the positivity. I think what the fan base and myself are asking for is have a tighter leash. There's no reason to run him out there 25, 30 minutes when he's cold. And I get shooters he needs volume to maybe get going. But if it's a night like last night where he's 0 of 8, it's the fourth quarter, you get him out of there. And to Steve Kerr's credit, he did. So hopefully, he's quicker on that when he recognizes Buddy doesn't have a rhythm. The Nets, though, man, it's good to see D'Lo in his rightful place in the league finally, right? Like just some guy on a lottery team. Like he is so bad defensively, and I love that we picked on him and matchup hunted him. And that's another thing that Jimmy brings to the table, right? He's a guy, because he's a guy that wants to do that. In turn, I think the whole team's going to do it a little more. And so they end up pulling that one out. I mean, it was great. I wasn't even going to be mad, honestly. At the end of that first quarter, I was like, well, all right. We're not, kind of saw this one coming. But for them to have the juice to pull that out and climb back and get that win, yeah, man. It feels like I said this at the end of today's breakdown. I know we're all looking at positioning and seeding and how, as the ceiling rises on what this team can be, I think ultimately the most important thing is can they finish the season charged up and rested for the playoffs? You don't want to have a sprint to the finish to the final day of the regular season. Now, that may not mean climbing up to the fourth seed, fifth seed. What it may mean is creating a further gap between the teams behind us right now. But you'd love, the final week of the season for it to not be super important playoff basketball because it's an older team. You may argue as a younger team, like you want those battles. For this team, you'd love for them to have their battery filled up headed into the playoffs. A month ago, we were talking about just hopefully getting to the playoffs. That's how drastic this change has been. All right, y'all. Now, I know you're wondering and watching this video, and you're like, what's good, Alk? Did you change rooms? I could sit here and I could tell you that, right? I could be like, oh, no, one of my daughters moved out, and now I'm setting up an office and a studio. But I built this channel on honesty. And if you know me personally, like that's who I am. I'm almost one of these people that's like too honest to a fault. It's like, oh, like sometimes white lies are what people want to hear. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to tell you what it is, right? That's kind of who I am. My wife and I have separated. And we have been together for over 20 years, since we were kids. And I don't want to go into details. But I'm just down the street from the house in an apartment here. And, it got to it. The kids are older now. They're like grown and stuff like that. And it's gotten to a point where it was just more bad than good. And we want to always remain friends first and foremost. And so we had to try something different here and have our space and see how it goes. But yeah, so I appreciate y'all giving me a little grace. I'm going to soundproof. I probably sound echoey and find some sort of setup here where it looks better and it's back to sounding like the channel and all that. But that's what's going on with me. And yeah, so I ask for a little grace here for the next couple of weeks to get settled in and find my groove. But yeah, That's all I got for y'all for now. Patrons, I know I owe y'all a VIP episode here coming up soon. But again, if you've noticed, if I haven't been as attentive in the messages and kind of a little distracted, now you know why. But we got a big one here Saturday. This Detroit team, I'll say this Detroit team is the type of team, at least in the past, would give us a lot of trouble. A super young athletic team that can defend and can play at pace. They're all right. They want to play at pace as well. So we'll see how it goes. Fingers crossed that Kuminga makes his return. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.